My name is Ernest Lent, and I'm a resident of Arlington, Virginia. In 1961, I became a member of the Service Committee, the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, and my title was Director of Domestic Affairs, which in effect meant I was in charge of the Civil Rights Program. I was raised in Columbia, South Carolina, a typical Southern boy. Went to school in the 1920s and 30s. And I had a transformational experience during the war, during World War II. I was a pilot in the United States Air Force, flying in New Guinea and the Philippines for a while. And it was during my flight training that this transformational experience occurred. I went home on leave one week, and this was in 1943, and I arrived in the railway station in Columbia about noon, and when my train pulled in, there was a huge troop train, an Army troop train, in the station, just pulling in. And I watched it unload. And there were two kinds of soldiers on that train. The majority of the soldiers were American black soldiers. The other soldiers were German prisoners of war. And in this railway station, there's a restaurant. In those days, all restaurants were segregated, as you know. Black people would go to the rear window of the restaurant, whereas a plate of food would be handed out to them. Well, white people would go inside and eat. Well, I stood there and I watched these black soldiers go to that window at the back door. And then I watched the German prisoners of war, the white prisoners of war, go into the restaurant to be seated to eat. And this little Southern boy turned around 180 degrees because I was a typical product of my time at that time. My life had never been the same culturally or socially ever since. But I retired in 1989, went to Georgetown, South Carolina, bought a little condo near Winyah Bay, watched the ships come. I could sit on my back porch, watch the ships come up the river, watch the alligators basking on my backyard. Had a wonderful time until I was invited by a friend to come to Washington because I was involved to a degree in human rights then. But I came to Washington where I could stand out in front of the White House or organize groups to stand and chant and protest various human rights problems throughout the world. And that's my joy. That's what I've retired to. And God knows that the work's cut out for anybody who wants to engage in the problems of abuse of human beings, either individually or nationally. And let me give you an example of an issue that I've been working on with a lot of help from other people, including Unitarians. On Sunday, November 29, of just a week from today, there's going to be an election in the Latin American country of Honduras. On June 28th, the president of Honduras, his name is Zelaya, who had been paying at least some attention to the plight of the indigenous people who live in Honduras, the campesinos, the people we used to call peasants, in other words, who traditionally have been virtually enslaved by the ruling classes, the rich and the wealthy, the ruling classes of Latin America. He raised the minimum wage, which raised a big furor, anti-Zelaya furor. You have to remember that the Constitution of Honduras was written in the 1980s. That was when Ronald Reagan was leading the onslaught against democracy for the poor and for the American Indians. After all, when we say indigenous people, those are the remaining American Indians in South America. They are the virtual slaves. If you define slavery as people working with just enough to get by, but with no place to call their own, no land to call their own, and no participation in the economy and the politics of their own countries. In other words, no democracy and freedom that the United States advertises as it proposing in South America. The military came in, the army came into the home of the president, the democratically elected president, in his pajamas, picked him up and took him out of the country. Since then, there's the people, the non-rich people in Honduras have been on the streets every day protesting the overthrow of their government.